Main topic number 2. I think you're gonna like the emoji in this one. It's a little policeman because third party.
Nice.
I tried to find like a little bank robber or something, but they don't have that emoji anymore because being naughty is not on. So we got the police because a little third party. But
There you go.
the second Daily Bugle headline topic this week: can third party beat Hot Toys? Is it happening? Will it ever happen? Because for the longest time, Hot Toys have kind of been number one. I mean, there have been a couple of instances where, like, oh yeah, they're not going to make that thing, but even if they did, I'll stick with third party. I remember back when Green Goblin was announced by Toy Zero, and then Hot Toys announced their Green Goblin. A lot of people said, I already have the Toy Zero. It's not necessary. Simply not necessary to get the Hot Toys one. But then, in the end, people kind of change their mind and get the Hot Toys one.
Yeah.
But Will, just to get the conversation flowing, what do you think? Can third party beat Hot Toys? And this is a multi-layered question. Not only in terms of quality, but also in terms of price, and also in terms of availability, and also in terms of character selection, because there are so many levels to this question. It's not just, yeah, that's better. Right. Because there are so many different levels, and third party, they're stepping up the game a little bit. And on the screen, I'm going to have a couple of different comparisons of one-to-one comparisons. A Hot Toys version versus a third party version. And then we can decide, both in the chat, and Will and I, we can decide who did it better. There are a couple of years in between some of these, but also some of them are more recent. So as we're going through, we'll cycle through them. But Will, you can break that question down however you like, friend.
Yeah, well, it's a great one. I would say, as far as quality, rarely it happens. It happens every now and then because Hot Toys has been the king and the industry leader for so long for a reason, because they're the best. They just are. They're the most consistent. They're the best. And I really we all really love the stuff that they put out. Yeah, they have some misses from time to time, but dude, that said, I've never been the biggest third party guy, but I'm starting to really love third party for the right character, because I think you made a really good point about what third party can actually be in terms of character selection and price. As far as character selection, they can absolutely. Of course, you're always going to want your Star Wars and Marvel and DC. For most collectors, I would say 98% of collectors are going to be interested in those three IPs, particularly the big two. We'll see what happens with DC, but really most collectors, Star Wars and Marvel, are pretty essential to their collection. They're pretty integral to what you have going on. But as far as third party, there are a lot of characters that are unexplored by Hot Toys that are really done super well by third party. For example, Game Toys. I know I rave about them all the time. The Game Toys Final Fantasy figures. Those things have all become grails. They're all amazing. Game Toys killed it in every aspect. And those are some of my favorite figures, even more than most of the Hot Toys that I have.
Wow.
Sephiroth from Game Toys is my favorite figure in my collection. That's a third party figure. Pop Toys Scorpion is certainly up there. He's in the top 5. And he's better than a lot of the Hot Toys, in my opinion, than I have. He's die-cast armor and die-cast swords and everything. He's amazing. But it's also because I love the character. So that's why I think third party really fills a really nice void nowadays, especially because they are raising the bar. They're stepping their game up. Because in order to survive, they have to adapt. And I think they're doing that. The ones that are able to adapt are. And they will survive, and maybe they'll end up getting a license, or who knows. But I think they can beat Hot Toys as far as character selection and price. Price, yeah, third-party figures generally tend to be a lot cheaper than Hot Toys. Not always. Some figures are a little bit more expensive based on the materials used. Even Nathan Drake, right? I think it was like maybe $238, something like that. Not quite a Hot Toys price for most figures, but it's inching in that ballpark, right? It's starting to get close to that. So at that point, yeah, the price is still in the third-party's favor because they're not paying any licensing fees. But, it also makes them not bound by the regulations of what a license would actually mandate or what it would actually require.
I like that.
So that's also, they're not bound by those regulations. So they can do pretty much whatever they want. They can make Arthur Morgan, or they can make Nathan Drake or Joel and Ellie. And they're not saying, like, the license will be like, oh, well, we don't want you to do this. We want you to, and they're just like, we don't care because we're not licensed. So, it's not like Hot Toys where they have to they are beholden to the licensee. So that's what I would say. Third party can beat Hot Toys under the right circumstances, but as far as price and availability, they definitely can. And character selection, they can. But as far as quality, sometimes, but not always, not usually, but sometimes they can, especially for a character you love that maybe you might view with more rose-colored glasses anyway,
I agree on pretty much all accounts. And Will, he brought something up that I'm going to touch on in just a second, but Bob Dylan also says, we got 3 third-party vultures and Hot Toys. What are they doing? They're still just teasing. So that's back to that character selection point. because a character, a villain, a main villain from a pretty big movie, Spider-Man Homecoming, our only option is third party. But we have a lot of options. We've got Jazz Inc., we've got the Toy Zero one, and we've got the third one. I think it's by Eternal Toys. I still have to review that one. It's sitting out there, but I wanted to space out my Vulture reviews. This was a prime example for me, though, of a one-to-one. Hot Toys made their own version of Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne, but that was back in the day. 2013, I think, or maybe 2012. Either way, they've come a long way. The likeness wasn't fantastic. The tailoring was kind of doll-like. But third-party Mars Toys, with their tailoring, this suit, oh my god. I have no words to describe how good the tailoring is here. You get multiple cummerbunds, you got the glasses, and I'm pretty sure they said that the turtleneck was going to be like a pre-order bonus because he was wearing the turtleneck in the Batcave. The head sculpt, huge improvement. The skin tone especially, it's a lot lighter as compared to Hot Toys back in the day. They were going real tan. Not sure why they were doing that, but they've stopped doing that now. But back in the day, they were. So this is a one-to-one. In this instance, I think that they did. Mars Toys did supplant the Hot Toys Michael Keaton, but that one wasn't very good to begin with. So it's just a little palate cleanser to start us off. This one, next one, is going to be a lot more tricky, I think. This is a situation. Look at this boy. This is a situation where it never happened. And this is a huge win. That's why I said it's going to be tricky, because kind of automatically want to say that third party is the winner, right? Because this never happened. Hot Toys never made this guy. And people, they wanted him. But at the same time, the order quantities for 66 Batman and Robin, they weren't huge. He didn't fly off the shelves like potentially Hot Toys were thinking. Now, for Hot Toys, they need to get those huge volume orders to satisfy licensing costs, distribution costs, because they're sending them around the world, so they're distributed from the US. So they didn't make this guy. But I don't know why this stream is so Mars Toys heavy, but it is. Mars Toys decided they were going to make Cesar Romero's Joker. This thing looks insanely good. Mm-hmm. Tailoring, accessory count, there are multiple versions, multiple head sculpts. So once again, touching on that character selection point, Will.
Yep.
Hot Toys just didn't make it. So is this a win by default, perhaps?
Yeah. And Justin, remember also the one, now they obviously did decide to do it, but the classic Loki is another example.
It's coming up.
Because So Toys, they made it and they did it really, really well, apparently. I've never owned the figure, but it looks pretty great from what I've seen. See, there it is. And then Hot Toys decided to make one, which I think probably outdid the So-So. But nonetheless, they're both amazing figures. So, but when I look at that Cesar Romero, I don't really know as much about that Joker because I haven't seen it, but the figure has a lot of presence, bro. Like I look at that and I'm just thinking, wow, that's a really nice, like exciting looking figure, very colorful. So yeah, in this classic Loki, this is not going to be one that I would pick up, even though I did really enjoy the show. Yeah, I'm more of a, I'll get Sylvie. And I'll get Tom Hiddleston, but classic Loki, dude, this is kind of a creepy figure.
Like, I love it. Look at that grin.
The head sculpt is amazing, no lie about it, and no, ifs, ands, buts about it. But I would say it's a very limited character in terms of its appeal to me, just because it's kind of it was meant to be a little sort of comic, it's meant to be like sort of comic accurate and kind of silly looking in a way, right? It's like
a retro.
Yeah. It's a variant Loki. It doesn't look as modern. So put that next to the rest of my collection. And it's like, this looks a little... I like the alligator Loki.
I love these pose. Say hello to my
pretty much what he's doing, yeah. So it was kind of like when Hot Toys put out the Daredevil photos recently. He was doing the Wakanda Forever pose. Like,
that was weird. I don't know why they did that.
I'm not sure why that happened, but same kind of deal here. But yeah, dude, I know what you're saying. The Mars Toys, and So-So. I have not owned a So-So figure yet. I do have the Homelander on pre-order, but... Mm-hmm. Whenever that comes out. So
where is that guy? We don't know. Hopefully soon. I did see a comment. Traveled Soap says Cocaine Bear looks really funny, especially because it's a true story. Funny story about Cocaine Bear. I was invited by Universal to the press screening, but it was on my birthday. And I didn't really. I'm going out for dinner with Steph, obviously my wife, so I didn't want to be like, hey, so we're gonna go see a movie about this bear that gets high on cocaine and like kills people. So we didn't go, but we might go and see it. It looks kind of wacky. Steph wanted to see it in the end, but I was like, nah, we missed out the boat anyway, because once you don't RSVP in time, then you just miss out. But Cocaine Bear, that was a funny story about that. So 1-to-1, Once again, So-So Toys, classic Loki. This is more of a modern one, though. This isn't that type of situation that we had just before with Bruce Wayne, where they're years apart. This was like 5 minutes apart. Like, So-So announced theirs, and then Hot Toys, they announced theirs really close to the So-So Toys announcement, but where's the Hot Toys one? We have had the So-So Toys one in the display for a while, and we are still waiting for the Hot Toys one with no word of when it's going to possibly come. So that's another point with third parties. You sometimes get updates. They have their own Facebook group, and you could ask them, hey, when is this coming? They say, okay, we're working on it. Here's an update. Here's a picture of the head sculpt. Here's a post of the accessories. Speaking of accessories, the infamous cup issue.
The Grail.
The Grail. The So-So Toys one has said cup, and the Hot Toys one, for whatever reason, doesn't. So this is what Will was talking about earlier, being beholden to the licensor. So Marvel probably didn't want to promote the drinking of alcohol, although it could have been water in that goblet for all we know.
Yeah.
And just like smoking cigarettes and now guns with Warner Brothers, it seems like cups are a no-no. So, for instance, if they did a Jericho Tony Stark, with the case that opened up and said we include one of these with every purchase of 10,000 or more, and he gets his little, I think it was whiskey he was drinking or bourbon or something, wouldn't come with the cup. Maybe you'd get the case and there'd be nothing.
That'd be
open
it,
up. It's open up, nothing. This is empty. So, being beholden to licensor approval is one thing that So-So Toys and other third-party companies can skate around very cleverly because they aren't doing it the legal way. But that might be a good thing for consumers, not necessarily for people who own the IP. Not ideal. But then again, if they were going to make said character in the first place, they would have done it. That's always been my standpoint, is if it's a character like Wong, for instance, nobody's making a Wong. Third-party company comes along, they make a Wong. Is that so bad? If Hot Toys were going to make one, number one, people who had the third party would probably sell it and get it. Yeah. Number two, it would have happened by now. So I don't necessarily feel super bad for the people who own the license, because if they were going to try and make their money, they would have done so already. I heard an interesting comment recently, Will.
Yeah.
Someone said, because someone was complaining about a Hot Toys head sculpt, as tends to be the case. And someone said something very, very, very insightful. They said, well, don't forget, the head sculpt, there might be multiple variants of that head sculpt, variations. It needs to go to licensor approval. Right. And not always will the licensor or the actor who has to approve their likeness pick the one that looks the best to us. They might pick the one that they like best that is not actually the best. That is totally a thing that can happen. The license says, oh, yes, okay, that looks like Gal Gadot for Wonder Woman, but we want to tweak the hair or the jawline, or it's not quite what we want. We want it to look like this. Like, that doesn't look like Gal Gadot. Yeah, I know, but that's what we want to give you the approval.
Right.
You know what I mean? I hope that doesn't happen often.
I hope so too, yeah.
It's totally a thing that can happen with licensor approval. The last point is kind of the nail in the coffin for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Price point.
Oh, yep.
Because, Will, over the years, Hot Toys has started out relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
This was something that I found out when I was in Hong Kong for the first time. I was having lunch with Eric Lee, and he was giving me all the info on, how Hot Toys came to be, how they're perceived in Hong Kong. Hot Toys are actually considered like a relatively entry-level collectible in Hong Kong. They're the affordable brand because you've got other high-end companies making statues, etc., really high-end custom figures, because Hong Kong is it's like Japan, a very collectible friendly country. There's a big market in Hong Kong. I was out for dinner at Sushi, and the guy next to me at the table eating dinner with his wife, they were looking at Hot Toys on their phone together. They were talking about figures. I was like, what?
Nice,
I've never seen that before.
Dude. Yeah, you never see that. Never see that.
You never ever see that. But they were both they were comparing something just got announced. So Eric Lee told me that they're considered relatively budget-friendly figures, whereas here in the Western world, because we have to import them, they are not. They are considered the highest of high ends. So third party, they can come in at a lower price point, no licensing fees, and their figures aren't being shipped. They're not being produced in Hong Kong, sold at retail, sold at wholesale to an American company, then shipped to America, then shipped again from America to you. That's how it works for Hot Toys.
Yeah.
Their product is set at a retail price in Hong Kong, maybe $150, $200, $300, whatever. They have to package those up, send them on a pallet to the US. Then the US obviously puts a markup on them depending on the character, popularity, etc., order number. Then they have to send them to wherever you are around the world or to your local comic book stores. Like for us here, it goes Hot Toys, then it goes US, then it goes Icon, is our Australian distributor, then it goes to comic book stores. That is how many points of contact it is for one figure. And then the price, every time it hits that next store, they have to take a piece of the pie. So you start to pay more and more and more, not because the figures are getting better necessarily, but because you're paying for the right to own it, basically, to import it into your country. And I don't love that at all. I feel like the figure's price point should be dictated by the manufacturer alone. Stops there, like Apple. You go to an Apple store in America, you go to an Apple store anywhere else in the world, Apple has set the price point because they made the thing. They should be the one to decide. That's what I think. But it's not how it happens, unfortunately. Maybe one day. Third party, though, they don't care.
Yeah, they don't. There's no license, so they're just like, well,
they really don't care.
They're outlaws, so they don't care, bro.
Yeah, they really don't care. So they can do pretty much whatever they want with the price point. And most of the time, they undercut the official companies, which for collectors, for consumers, that's a huge win. Because that means if you are dedicated to one line, like say, for instance, the Mars Toys 1966 Batman and Robin line, you can get Batman, you can get Robin, you can get Penguin, you can get Joker, multiple different versions of Joker. You can get Riddler, they're doing, maybe to Mr. Freeze. You can build out that whole line. Chances are, if Hot Toys did that line, you'll be paying a lot more.
Yeah.
For those same characters, and maybe even with less accessories, potentially. Simply because of distribution and licensing. Those two things are killers when it comes to the price point of figures. Will.
Yeah.
Third-party figures. I know you have a love-hate relationship. You're getting a little bit more into them now with Pop Toys and Game Toys.
Yep.
And Lim Toys.
And Lim Toys
as well. The price point thing, the budgeting side of collecting, I don't really touch on as much, but it's still definitely something that people should keep in mind. I don't like to give financial advice because I wish I had a disclaimer down below, like financial advice is not approved of whatever.
Right.
Will, the price point factor. I know you can go for it.
I'm not even
does
a financial
the price point
advisor.
factor weigh in for you?
Oh, absolutely, dude. Absolutely. Because when you're looking at things like the Mars Toys Joker and things along those lines, dude, $160 shipped for a figure like that, dude, that's hard. That's hard to ignore if you really like the character. And for example, the Sephiroth was a little more expensive because he had the wing and the die-cast sword, and that was like $270, and that's pretty high for a third-party figure. But when you look at some of these other ones, man, like the Lim Toys Nathan Drake, I know some people are like, oh, that price is a little steep. Not to me. Because when you look at all the accessories, the two head sculpts, you give, the swappable magnetic forearms, like there's a lot going on with this figure. The base is pretty elaborate. So $238 shipped. Look at a Hot Toy, it's $270 plus shipping and tax. So if you're patient, you can wait and get a little bit, lower than that. But as far as what retail price is, you're paying out the door $300 at least, right? So this includes shipping and everything.
Like 4 or 5.
Yeah, and dude, and Justin, man, and I just saw a comment, by the way, commenting my God of War statues. Thank you so much, bro. I like Baldur more than Justin does, but it's fine. I do love the God of War set. But a God of War I wanted to bring up because that's a great example. Third-party companies I know, what's the company that is making a Kratos?
Worldbox.
Yeah, Worldbox. Yeah, so they're doing that. And while it's not perfect, I'm happy that people are going to get the option because the Mondo, I think the Mondo's like, I've never had it. It looks all right. The joints kind of bother me, and it's hard to get now. It's very expensive. So I'm loving that a Worldbox type of company is coming in and doing those type of characters. And again, that's the type of stuff that I want to see. There's, variety is never a bad thing. But as far as budgeting is concerned, the price is hard to top for these third party because they're not paying licensing fees. So that's probably the biggest cost that Hot Toys and those companies that are licensed have, because you got to pay the likeness rights. If it's a head sculpt, you got to pay the license rights in general.
Yep.
So that's probably the primary factor that drives a figure's price up. And when you eliminate that, you can price much more reasonably and draw people in by undercutting, like you said. So that's part of why third party is so tempting, because you're getting something a lot cheaper and potentially still really good quality. It's like Pop Toy Scorpion, maybe $200, something like that. So die cast everywhere. I mean, hard to top that.
Very hard. And I think there's another side to this question also. It's not just cheaper always better, but
Yeah.
what about the situation like the classic Loki situation where the So-So Toys one, it comes out quicker, it's cheaper, and for a lot of people, it's almost as good. I'm
Right.
curious for the audience, and we're about to move on to Q&A, and we'll look at the Shang-Chi. I know, we'll look at the Shang-Chi. Is it a situation that you could potentially see yourself in, those in the chat and will, if the price point is lower and it comes out a hell of a lot sooner, if it's not a main character, if it's a background character or a sidekick, could you potentially see yourself taking the third party route for that character so that you could keep the funds available and you could start to build out your display now with that character for when the official one comes out, you're ready to go. You have the side characters already there. You don't have to wait for Hot Toys. You've got the money set aside because you saved money on the side characters like classic Loki. That's where I see third party being a big win, personally, is because they come out quicker. And if the quality is a big one. If it's a well-known company and the quality is good, close to Hot Toys, it's never going to be parity one-to-one, I don't think. Sometimes it can be very close, like that Lim Toys Nathan Drake. I reckon that's Hot Toys quality all day long.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But we don't have any point to compare. They never made a Nathan Drake.
Right.
So that's why I said there's not parity yet.
Right.
But people in the chat saying yes, straight up. Traveled Soap, absolutely. Home Alone says side characters in general for me are third-party picks all day long. Ken, yes. The answer is yes, full stop. There you go. All right. So
there we go.
In some instances, I think this statement, can third party beat Hot Toys? It's not a blanket statement all the time. Absolutely, yes, 100%. They're going to destroy Hot Toys. Get them out of here. I think sometimes it is possible. They beat them in terms of not all things, but they'll beat them in terms of price. They'll beat them in terms of speed to release. They'll beat them in terms of character selection and sometimes quality. But usually it's not all of the above.
Yeah, right.
So sometimes you'll have one or the other. So there are definitely reasons to consider third-party figures as well as or in place of Hot Toys.